Hi everyone, and welcome to the AJC Decatur Book Festival. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Kelly, and I'm one of the stage captains here. Just quick announcements. If you've come in since I last stood here a minute ago, please turn off your cell phone or anything that might make noise during the screening. And we are delighted to have a great group here with us today. I'd like to just very quickly introduce our moderator, Randy Yu. He is the curator of modern political and historical collections at Emory University's Manuscript Archives and Rare Book Library.
Thanks, y'all. Thanks for coming out. How y'all doing? Welcome to Voices from the Underground, Speckled Birds and Smoking Typewriters. My name's Randy. Do I need a microphone? Ah! I just ruined my self-image. All right. I want to welcome you on behalf of the Emory Libraries. We're a very proud sponsor of the Decatur Book Festival, and we're also honored to have this panel as part of the Emory track here. Make sure y'all stop by the Emory Libraries booth at the corner of East Ponce and Claremont. When you go by, you can pick up Professor McMillian's book there. We have it. I'm just going to provide a short introduction and then introduce our panel members because y'all ain't here to see me. One of the contemporary descriptions of the Strip in Tight Squeeze in Atlanta in 1970 described the denizens as a combustible mixture of hippies, politicos, hipsters, bikers, gawkers, and rednecks. The last two groups, of course, were outsiders. The rest of the groups formed a colorful, creative, and sometimes contentious community. This community had its own voice, its own newspaper, The Great Speckled Bird, named, of course, for the great Roy Acuff song. The paper, its mission, which was spelled out on the front page editorial of the first edition, was to, quote, do our thing, which being bitch and badger, carp and cry, and perhaps give Atlanta and environs, because we're growing, baby, a bit of honest, interesting, and we trust, even readable journalism. A rare thing, you must admit, in America today, unquote. The remarkable thing is that there were similar communities and similar newspapers all throughout the country, and they were in dialogue with each other through the underground press. Today, three of our distinguished panelists, Krista Brewer, Bob Goodman, and Steve Wise, are going to share their experiences from their time at the Bird. John McMillian is going to talk about the underground press in a broader context and talk about his book, Smoking Typewriters, the 60s Underground Press, and the Rise of Alternative Press in America. Now to introduce our panelists. Krista Brewer was born and raised in Atlanta and has a master's in urban studies from Georgia State University. She was on staff of the Great Speckled Bird from 1973 and 1974 as a local news reporter and was involved with the Bird until it stopped publication in 1976. She is a full-time community volunteer, and she's raised 3 children right here in Atlanta. Bob Goodman grew up in a segregated southeast Missouri town. He became active in the civil rights movement and the anti-war movement during his college years in the 60s. He dropped out of the PhD program at Harvard in 1966 as soon as he was no longer draft eligible. He moved to Atlanta, where he taught history for 2 years at Morehouse College. He joined the Great Speckled Bird as a writer and editor shortly after its founding in 1968, and today he's an anti-war activist in the Georgia Peace and Justice Coalition. John McMillian is an assistant professor of history at Georgia State University. Before that, he taught for 8 years at Harvard. He earned his PhD in American history at Columbia. In addition to Smoking Typewriters, he's the co-editor of The Radical Reader, The New Left Revisited, and Protest Nations. In addition to his academic work, he sometimes writes for a broader audience, and his book reviews and op-eds have appeared in the Washington Post, the Boston Globe, the Atlantic, the Nation, the Chronicle of Higher Education, the Believer, the New York Press, and elsewhere. Currently, he's hard at work on a new book, Beatles versus Stones, The History of a Legendary Rivalry, which is scheduled to be published in early 2013 by Simon & Schuster. I would like to register my vote for the Stones right here and now. And finally, Steve Wise. He was a writer, editor, and occasional advertising manager of the Great Speckled Bird from 1968 to 1976, 1984 to 1985. He also edited Southern Struggle from 1978 to 1979. Active in the New Left movement in the 60s, he served as chairman of the Southern Student Organizing Committee in 1966 and 67. He was also a founder of the Latin American Solidarity Group in 1974 to 1978. Now retired, he, quote, poses as a rock and roll and pop music dork, unquote. He also says that he does not have a speaking part today. We'll see if we can change it. We'll actually have time for questions at the end of this. We also have a very special offer for you at the end of this, so make sure you all stick around to the end. Jonathan, would you like to get us started?
Sure. Thanks everyone so much for coming out. It's really fun to be here. Thanks to my co-panelists. I thought I was going to be a little underdressed for this event, but I see that I'm not. And I'm glad that I made it here on time. You know, last night my friends Stephen and Teresa, they took me out to a really nice dinner. And then they wanted to have some drinks afterwards. And I said, I really can't stay out late. I've got this event in the morning. And Stephen especially kept saying, no, John, just have another drink. And if you know me, you know that's not really my style. But they foisted a couple beers on me, and I had to rush here to make it, but I'm glad to be here. This is the second event that I've done in Decatur for this book. The first one was maybe in February or early March. It was at the library. I don't know if anyone was there, but it was a lot of fun. There was a weird mix of sort of, unreconstructed 60s veterans were there, and then some younger activists. And then the really cool thing is that I had a couple of friends who came out of the woodwork that I had not seen in almost 20 years. These are guys I went to high school and college with who got wind of this event. And so they showed up after work, but they were both wearing these dark Navy suits. And someone thought that maybe they were FBI agents. and if this had been an event, if this had been an underground press event 40 years ago and Steve was here and everything, it probably would be the feds. I'm just going to begin, I'm not going to read to you, but I just want to read through, or closely paraphrase just the first couple pages of the book, and then I'll talk a little bit more about its historiographical claims. This is an academic book. It was based on my dissertation, but I've tried to write it in sort of a lively, accessible way, so it's a bit of a hybrid. It begins by describing a famous, or I guess an infamous concert that the Rolling Stones held at Altamont Speedway in December of 1969. I don't know if anyone's seen the film Give Me Shelter, the documentary. It's one of my favorite rock movies. Although it has a grim, the subject matter is a bit grim. The Stones did this free concert for a couple of reasons. I think they felt that they had sort of missed out on Woodstock, and then also on the '69 tour, which is one of the first real modern rock tours. They had alienated a lot of their fans with high ticket prices and sort of arrogant behavior. I'm sorry, I forgot to set this. Will someone just stop me when I get close to 15 minutes?
I'll be happy to stop. It's my job.
And so this concert, however, was hastily arranged. They had to build the stage just the night before. It was only about 3 feet high. I don't know how many people were there, but it was in the hundreds of thousands of people who had showed up for this show. And then they had very unwisely hired the Hells Angels motorcycle gang to do security. And the Angels showed up they had taken, LSD, and allegedly they were paid with a truckload of beer in order to sort of guard the stage. But they had, their pool cues, and they were really violent and really sort of roughing around the crowd, all day long during this. There were other bands that played in the afternoon. There might have been a little bit less violence if the Stones had come on earlier. But they knew that the event was being filmed, and supposedly Mick Jagger didn't want to go on until it was dark because his makeup would look better under the stage lights. Meanwhile, and again, people are getting beaten up all day. And then when the Stones played, there was commotion around the stage and fighting going on. And there was this one guy, he looks like, if you look at the film, maybe one of the only African Americans in this event. His name is Meredith Hunter. And he was sort of in front of the stage and minding his own business for the most part, although he was sort of licking his lips in kind of a gross way throughout the show, and you could tell he was sort of tweaking on, that's a sign that someone's tweaking on amphetamines. And then at some point he